2020 was not a very good year. I don't really need to tell any of you that, I'm sure you're all very aware already, but in a year where everyone has been stuck inside as society feels like it's collapsing around us, more than ever have video games truly felt like an escape. It's a shame then that when we needed them most, great new games have been in short supply throughout 2020. Until September, I had only played like 4 new games. Thankfully, around the end of the year, we got a new console generation and a bunch of new games with it, and since I was lucky enough to get a PS5 on launch, I was finally able to try some of the PS4 games I've been missing out on over the past 7 years. That said, I didn't get around to playing everything that I had on my backlog from 2020, like Sackboy, Destroy All Humans, and a handful of indie games, and there were plenty more that just never really caught my attention to begin with, like Spider-Man Miles Morales, Final Fantasy VII Remake, The Last of Us 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and so on. Even with my shiny new PS5, I'm still not all that into these AAA games. I just want to point that out before I get comments asking me why I didn't have this or that game on my list. This is my list, and I can only put on it the games that I played. With all that said, I want to give a few honorable mentions before diving into my top 10. My first honorable mention goes to A Short Hike, as it originally released in 2019, so it doesn't really qualify for the list proper. I wanted to give it a spotlight regardless though, as I didn't learn of its existence until it showed up in a Nintendo Direct for the 2020 Switch port. It's a wonderful, charming little indie game where you explore an island for upgrades to help you climb all the way to the top of a mountain. If you've never played or heard of this game before, please give it a try. Second is Biped, a puzzle platformer built for co-op. I've always had a soft spot for co-op games, and I always love a unique control scheme. Biped dares to combine the two to make for a really fun experience with a friend. I didn't get to finish the campaign, hence why it's only an honorable mention, but it's so unique that I had to give it a shout out. Finally, Dreams. I'm only giving it an honorable mention because, honestly, I have no idea how to rank this game. It's like Little Big Planet, but instead of just designing levels, you're designing entire games. There's a massive pool of mostly terrible games to play. There are some good ones, but they can be kind of hard to find. I didn't really get into the creation side of Dreams quite yet, but I've spent more than enough time playing games in Dreams to know that it's definitely a unique enough experience to be worth it. I've always been a fan of amateurish games, and giving anyone the tools to make just about whatever they want leads to a goldmine of wonderful trash. I've seen stuff ranging from genuinely impressive to bafflingly strange, and I loved all of it. With those out of the way, let's start the list proper with number 10. I've never gotten into Animal Crossing before, but with how dry the early months of 2020 were and the pandemic just setting in, I decided to give New Horizons a shot. At the very least, it would be a fun game to play with my girlfriend, as she's a huge fan of the series. To my surprise, however, I ended up enjoying it quite a bit. Building up my island, growing my collections of bugs and fish for the museum, and filling out all the achievements in the Nook Miles app was pretty fun. For about 3 months. Granted, that's a lot more than I ever expected to get out of it, and it's still sitting pretty as my most played game on Switch, but once I got tired of the daily grind, I didn't really have much incentive to come back every day. I do still hop on it every now and then, mostly just to visit my girlfriend's island, but that period of playing every single day is long gone by now. Even so, I enjoyed my time with New Horizons, and got way more out of it than I ever could have asked for. I have a bit of a weird relationship with visual novels. I've only played 2, but one of them is among my top 3 favorite games of all time. Despite my love of Katawa Shoujo, I've never really dived into the genre to find more games like it. However, when I found out that the writer behind my favorite route from that game released a brand new VN that was free to play, I just had to check it out. First Snow follows a girl named Allison as she starts college. She's in a transitional period in her life, living away from her family for the first time, meeting a host of brand new people, all while juggling her college life. Eventually, she makes a few friends and falls in love, there's some conflict, then it all gets resolved and wrapped up nicely by the end. It's really short and there's not a ton to it, but what's there is nice. The characters are well written, and that's all I can really ask for in a slice-of-life visual novel like this. Now, apparently this is just a prologue of sorts to a full visual novel that's being worked on by the same team called Twofold, which explains First Snow's short length. For what's essentially a demo with its own unique slice of the story, it's pretty good. If you're into visual novels, it is free, so check it out. As a kid, I loved SpongeBob. I would watch it with my dad before school in the mornings, and it always made me laugh. Back then, I played the shit out of the movie game, but I never had Battle for Bikini Bottom. Fast forward to 2020, and BFBB has become a cult classic, so much so that it now has a shiny new remake, and it's pretty good. In all honesty, this pretty much gets free points for me just for being a 3D platformer collectathon. It's my favorite genre, so of course I was gonna like it to some extent. Helping BFBB Rehydrated is some damn good level design and solid controls. My biggest issue with Rehydrated was the spatulas that you have to buy from Mr. Krabs, which have been exponentially increased in price in the remake, which meant about an hour of unnecessary grinding to 100% the game. Aside from that, I did really enjoy my time with the game. It's nothing amazing, but if you like these types of games and haven't played it before, I'd say it's worth your time. Just don't play it on Switch, the load times are abysmal. I'm gonna be honest, this one left me just a little bit disappointed. Maybe my hopes were too high, but I was kind of expecting Crash 4 to be my automatic Game of the Year pick. It's fun as hell, don't get me wrong. It has fantastic level design, great controls, gorgeous visuals, and fun new power-ups in the form of these masks that give you different abilities. But it has a few problems holding it back. See, I'm a completionist, and I really don't mind tedious or grindy stuff, so long as there's not too much of it. Spending an hour or two grinding for shiny objects in SpongeBob or coins in Mario Odyssey just to fill out full completion, that's fine. But when I'm spending upwards of an hour on almost every single level in Crash 4 for these stupid, insanely perfect relics, or bumbling around trying to find one or two boxes that I missed, it just drags the whole experience down for me. It's hard to appreciate the fantastic platforming for what it is when I spend more than half of my time grinding out a bunch of repetitive crap for 100%. I can recommend Crash 4, just don't try to 100% it. It's still a great game underneath all the bullshit, but man can that bullshit stink up the experience. Here's one you probably haven't heard of. Tanuki Sunset is a game about a gnarly raccoon skateboarding around obstacles through vaporwave vistas. I really love raccoons, so you make a game where you get to play as one and I'm instantly on board. Fortunately though, Tanuki Sunset offers a lot more than just the ability to play as a raccoon. The skateboarding feels really tight and fun to control, and mastering those controls to rack up points or speed through levels to get 100% is really fun and rewarding. It's pretty unpolished, still has some bugs that at the time of writing have not yet been fixed, though the game only just came out in December, but the core gameplay loop is still really satisfying, especially when you throw in these arcadey time and score attack missions. Even if you're not up for tackling 100%, you can still enjoy a pretty fun, relaxing romp with some boppin' tunes and tons of charm. There are these occasional special events where you race a seagull or rescue a baby raccoon, and these moments make the game so much more memorable. I know this game will go under the radar, so if this looks interesting to you, please pick it up. You may remember both V and Celeste from last year's video, where I discussed my Game of the Year for every year of the past decade. I really love these kinds of precision platformers, so long as the challenges are short enough and the controls are tight. Right is like a cross between Super Meat Boy and Celeste, employing the former's death trap-filled level design and the latter's precise controls. These levels are super satisfying to clear. There's a really smooth difficulty curve throughout the game where you're starting off with pretty basic maneuvers, and by the end of the bonus levels you're doing near pixel-perfect jumps. There are optional coins to collect, 20 in every stage before the bonus world, and they add a lot of extra challenge for completionist types like me. Getting all of the coins unlocks the bonus world, and that's where I'd say the challenge really ramps up. There's a whopping 160 levels, and I can only really say I wasn't enjoying myself in a small handful of them. It does kind of rely on this trope of making you go back and forth through the same obstacle 2 or 3 times in one run if you're getting all the coins, but that's hardly a deal breaker. The biggest issue Right has to me is a complete lack of any story whatsoever, which holds it back when compared to the likes of Celeste. If you like precision platformers, please buy this game, it's fantastic. Every year I try to play through as many indie games as I can, because I often find that the most unique experiences come from the smaller teams with no shareholders to appease to or corporate executives breathing down their necks. Not every ambitious indie game I played this year was great. I remember being disappointed by Raji and especially A Fold Apart, but one of these games that did not disappoint was Superliminal. This game gave me major Portal vibes, and as someone who adores those games, this was instantly right up my alley. This game is a total mind-bender, giving you the ability to pick up objects and make them bigger or smaller depending on how and where you drop them. Combine those unique mechanics with interesting puzzles and an engaging story that smacks of the Stanley Parable, and you've got a wonderful, memorable experience that will go down as an indie darling to me. It even features some replayability in the form of optional collectibles, time trials, and achievements. These features are especially welcome considering the game's price point and short length if you're just playing through the campaign. If you saw the trailer for this game and thought it looked cool, it is. Try it out. I really like Ace Attorney. You know what else I really like? Picross. Murder by Numbers is the game I never knew I needed until I saw it. It's Ace Attorney-styled investigations through various crime scenes with Picross puzzles given when you find important pieces of evidence. Seriously, this is such a perfect combination for me that it's hard to put into words. The story is really fantastic, with fun and memorable characters, surprise twists, unique locations, and interesting cases. It's everything you would expect from a high-quality Ace Attorney game, but then they just had to throw the cherry on top by filling it with Picross puzzles. This is like one of those games that it feels like someone made specifically for me, and I absolutely loved it. Can't forget that wonderful soundtrack either, composed by Masakazu Sugimori, composer of Ace Attorney. Mediatonic really went all out in making this game a love letter to its inspirations and a fantastic game in its own right. Of course, I am a bit biased putting this so high on my list since it plays to my specific interests so well, but it's my list, so of course I'm gonna praise the game. You know, I've always wanted to try that Astrobot VR game. The idea of a 3D platformer that you play in VR is like a match made in heaven for me, but I don't have a PSVR. I did finally get to try it out at a friend's house, and it's just as amazing as I hoped it would be. Until I do get a PSVR though, at least I have Astro's Playroom. This game is just so lovely. Not only is it a super fun 3D platformer with great controls and fun unique sections, not only is it a love letter to PlayStation's history and all the landmark titles throughout it, not only is it a great tech demo showing off the PS5's controller and everything it's capable of, but it's all of those at the same time, and it does them all spectacularly. The level design is a real treat, with tons of collectibles and awesome set pieces. Everything complements Astro's controls just perfectly. Even as just a 3D platformer, Astro's Playroom would already be great, but then you throw in all these little references to classic PlayStation games, and they're all crafted with so much love and care. They're a lot more than just little references. They're a love letter to Sony's history in video games. On top of all that, it shows off the DualSense's new features in ways that really blew me away. The motion tracking, adaptive triggers, detailed rumble, it's all so cool, and this game alone turned the DualSense into a contender for best video game controller of all time for me. It's very rare that a video game brings me as much genuine, unfiltered joy as Astro's Playroom did. It's so much more than just a tech demo pack-in game. It's everything I love about video games, all in one package. Finally, my game of the year is Bugsnax. I was really blown away with this one. The more I played, the more I loved it, to the point where I couldn't put it down and constantly wanted to play more of it whenever I wasn't playing it, up until I finished it. Even after 100%ing the game, I still want to play more of it. The story is fantastic, with a really interesting plot where you have to gather up everyone who left the island's main town of Snaxburg and bring them back. You're on a quest to interview Elizabeth, an explorer who recruits you, a journalist, to come to the island and spread the word of her discoveries of Bugsnax. But when you arrive, she's gone missing and the town is deserted. Meeting all the characters is really fun. They all have great personalities and genuine depth that you wouldn't really expect from a game that looks like this. They all have unique relationships with one another that make them feel like real people, further helped by the great voice acting. In addition to the great story is a very fun core gameplay loop of catching Bugsnax and completing missions. The act of catching Bugsnax in itself is satisfying, as they take the ape escape approach to making the collectibles interactive, with different snacks having different attributes. They all react to your gadgets, sauces, and each other in different ways, making for a really engaging system that's very puzzle-oriented. You have to figure out the best way to catch each snack, and it's really fun filling out the Bugopedia. Doing all the different side quests adds a lot of variety to the game too. There are boss fights and events and other unique set pieces to keep things from getting stale, not to mention new areas constantly opening up, giving you new people to meet and new snacks to catch. The cartoony art style also helps to give it a unique identity, with these silly-looking Muppet-like characters and tons of clever designs for the Bugsnax that remind me a lot of the enemies in Ape Escape 2. The Ape Escape inspiration is definitely noticeable to someone like me who's a massive fan of that series, and its new ideas help to elevate it even higher than its inspirations. Bugsnax is simply amazing, and I cannot recommend it enough. Well, that wraps up 2020, and what a year it was. It may have been slow at the start, but eventually I found a good handful of games, and even a few that I came to love, so I guess it wasn't so bad after all. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and if you want to support me more directly, consider donating to my Patreon, where I sometimes post updates about videos I'm working on. Thanks for watching!